Yeah, you want to go back to this? So you're going to leave nice Germany with all the buildings for the gremlins. Which one are you going to choose? Really? You want to live with gremlins or do you want to live with Hans? Now, Hans is a nice guy until his money starts to go down and he starts blaming you for his problems. Then Hans is no longer a nice guy. Hans becomes the devil. Let's talk about Germany, guys, and let's talk about the refugee crisis. So you have around 1 million or so Syrian refugees living in Germany. And for years, we were told that they fled Syria because of Bashar al-Assad. So because we were told that for years, what people are saying now is, since Bashar al-Assad is no longer in power, now is the time for you to go back to Syria, because Bashar al-Assad was the origin of all your problems. He was the reason why you fled, supposedly. I don't think that's completely the story. I don't think that's entirely the case. I think a lot of people left just because of the war, not just because of Bashar al-Assad. I think it was because they were fleeing ISIS. They were fleeing rebel head choppers and Muslim gremlins. But all of the problems of Syria were put on the shoulders, were laid on the hands of Bashar al-Assad, and he has been blamed for all of Syria's problems. So, because that's the narrative, and that's been the narrative for a decade, the narrative now, the main talking point now is, well, since Bashar al-Assad is no longer in power, now is the time for you to go back home and to leave Germany. And so a lot of Syrian refugees are saying, no, we don't want to go. And I saw a video on this yesterday. It was from DW, Deutsche Welle, which is a major German broadcasting network. And they interviewed a number of Syrians, and these Syrians were saying that they don't want to leave Germany. They don't want to go back to Syria. And why don't they want to go back to Syria? I thought Bashar al-Assad was the problem. I thought Assad was the origin of all the problems, and it turns out that he was not the origin of all the problems. It turns out that these rebels are also a major problem, or really the biggest problem, I should say, when it comes to the Syrian civil war. And so a lot of these people don't want to leave Germany because they know that if they go back to Syria, they're going to be facing civil unrest. They're going to be facing they're going to be facing a destabilized society. They're going to be facing a society that is always in the prospect of having another civil war. They are going to face a society that's overran with ISIS and HTS and Al-Qaeda guys, and they don't want to deal with that. Germany is a much safer country, and Germany is a stable country, especially when you compare it to a country like Syria. I mean, regardless of all of the economic woes that the German people are currently undergoing, it is still nonetheless a stable country. So these Syrians don't want to leave Germany. Now, I'm sure some of them will leave Germany, and I'm sure some of them have already left Germany, but I don't think a lot of them want to leave. So what this causes is a predicament in which there is a debate, a national debate on what to do with the Syrians who don't want to leave. Should they be deported or should they be allowed to stay? There is talk in Germany of incentivizing Syrians to leave Germany by paying them 1,000 euros. But getting 1,000 euros is really not worth it. It's not worth going back to a war zone. You know, you can't convince someone to go to a war zone by giving them $1,000. It's not efficient. It's not very fitting. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to go back to a war zone where I could end up getting my head chopped off. But it'll be worth it because I'm going to get 1,000 euros. And my plane ticket will be paid for. It's just not really how people work. So then the question is, well, what do you do with the Syrians who don't want to leave? Do you allow them to stay, or do you deport them by force? The mainstream politicians are saying, look, listen, we can incentivize them by giving them money. We can encourage them to leave, but we're not going to force people to leave. The far right in Germany wants to force people to leave. They want to deport people. So it's a pretty, it's a very sensitive issue, and it's a very icky issue. The reason why I say it's icky is because you're talking about Germany. You're talking about the country that used to do actions. You know, the action is a word in the German language. I think it just means action, but it's a word that the Nazis would use to label rounding people up. So when they wanted to go into a neighborhood and round the neighborhood up of its Jews, they would say action. It's time for an action. And when the Germans first did the Holocaust, they didn't say, hey, we're going to put these people in death camps. They initially said, we're going to forcefully deport people into Eastern Europe, Eastern Europe, or into Poland, into the East. That's how it was known, the East, because Poland is east of Germany. So the Germans would say, okay, we're going to forcefully deport these people, and they're going to live in camps, and they're going to do slavery for us. They're going to be slaves. That was the initial idea of the Nazis. And then later on, they said, okay, we're going to exterminate them. Now, before they accelerated the policy of extermination, they were still killing people, but eventually they transitioned into a complete policy of total extermination. I mean, that's what it was. But at first, it was just at first the Shoah, or the Holocaust, was done as forced deportations. That's how it began. So I think there are German politicians who don't want to have this perception of Germany where German officers are doing actions in ethnic enclaves in Germany. Like, I don't think they want that image to be projected to the world. I don't think they want people saying things like, oh, look, Germany did mass deportations back in the 30s or back in the 40s, and here they are doing the same thing in the 2020s, and they just don't want to have that image. It doesn't look good for Germany. On the other hand, you have these far-right guys who don't give a damn because they like Hitler. They like the Nazis. They admire the Nazis. Bjorn Holke admires the Nazis. The leader of there's a far-right party in Germany. It's the number one nationalist party in Germany. It's right now the third biggest party in the country, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely one of the most popular parties in the country. Possibly the second most popular party in the country, if we are to believe a recent poll that was taken. And these people, they admire Hitler, and they want to do mass deportations. And they don't give a damn if doing mass deportations in current-day Germany would project a negative image for their country. They don't give a shit about that stuff. They want to enact a nationalist policy, and they want to recreate Germany to where it'll return back to its nationalist past. A good number of Syrians left for Europe solely for the Gibbs and economically careless life. Partially true, but not the whole story. I think anybody would have left Syria. Truly, I think anybody would have wanted to leave Syria. Any decent human being would have wanted to leave Syria for the security and the safety of their family. If you have a family in Syria, I don't think you want them to be living in a place where they could be bombed or they could be slaughtered. So, yeah, if there was a civil war in the United States, I wouldn't be surprised to see Americans going to Canada. So I don't blame people for wanting to leave war zones. The thing is that a lot of these Syrians have really established themselves in Germany. They have started businesses, they have had children, they have started families. They've been there for 10 years, roughly 10 years. So I don't really expect them to want to leave Europe, which is very stable, and then leave off to a war zone or a country that is very unstable. These Syrians are so many, Hans. Yeah, we need some Lebensraum. That's exactly what I'm foreseeing. I am foreseeing Nazism being revived in Germany. And there's going to be an election in Germany in January. And this is going to be a major issue. I foresee that the three biggest issues for the German election is going to be the economy, because the German economy is suffering right now. And SMY just beat me. He just said it. But yeah, the German economy is suffering right now. And the war between Russia and Ukraine, that's going to be another huge issue. It's been a huge issue since 2022. So there's that. And then the Syrian refugee issue. I think these are going to, and not necessarily in that order, but I think those three issues are the biggest issues right now, not just in Germany, but in all of Europe. Those are huge issues. And I've said this before. You have, what's it called? Volkswagen facing massive layoffs, and you have ThyssenKrupp Steel facing massive layoffs. And when you have when you have an economy that's corroding, that's declining, and it becomes very bad to the point where tons of people are being laid off. The thing with that is that you have scapegoating that goes on. And then people will start saying, well, it's these foreigners that are the problem, and that helps to spark more nationalism. The interesting thing, what makes this whole thing a sort of a perfect storm, or I should say a very dangerous storm, is the amalgamation of problems here and the nature of these problems. You have, on one hand, a bad economy, and that's scary enough. And you have on the other hand, you have a refugee crisis. On top of the refugee crisis, you have the toppling of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, which now gives the nationalists the green light to say, we can now do mass deportations because there's no longer a necessity for these people to live here. They're no longer refugees at this point because they were running away from Assad. They came here to seek refuge from Assad. Assad is no longer there, therefore they're no longer refugees. They're just living here. And they're going to start using rhetoric like they're sucking us dry or they're parasites or something like that, right? And so what the argument is that we should do mass deportations because these people don't have to be here anymore. They've lost that status of being refugees. So you have that situation. You have this predicament of the Syrian refugees. And on top of that, you have the bad economy. And that is a dangerous, dangerous combination because you have nationalism, bad economy, and then you have this crisis where you have around 1 million or so refugees living in Germany and they're not wanted. And the Germans are making it very obvious that they're not wanted. And then to make matters even more intense, a lot of these Syrians don't want to leave. So then the question arises, what do we do with these people? Do we allow them to stay? Or do we force them to leave? The far right is saying we force them to leave. If they get what they want, then that means the Germans are going to be doing actions. They're going to be doing roundups. They're going to be rounding people up. And then that's going to harken back to 30s and 40s Nazi Germany. And that's where things get really icky. And then the question also arises, and this is my personal question, and I could be completely wrong about this. This could end up being completely unjustified. But the question that I personally add to this is, will it escalate to something worse? Is it just going to be, if this policy of forced deportations does get enacted, is it going to just end at deportation? Is it just going to be deportation to Syria and that's it? Or is it going to escalate to something else? Could it escalate into bloodshed? That's the question. And would that bloodshed manifest in different ways? Could it be the Germans doing the killing, the Turks doing the killing, or the Germans and the Turks having a share in the killing? I mean, who knows? Well, we have yet to see. But all I know is that it's going to be ugly. And the thing is that you have this rising far-right party, which is now the second or third most popular party in Germany. You have this rising economic travail in Germany, and then on top of that, you have the Syrian migrant crisis. And now that Assad is gone, it exasperates that crisis even further because then people are saying, why are they here? There's no longer a reason for them to be here. There's no longer a justification for them to be here because they came here to seek refuge from Assad, and Assad is no longer here. So they should be pushed out. So Assad's toppling exasperates the whole Syrian refugee crisis. And then you have these sort of centrist politicians who are saying, well, we're not going to force people to leave, but we can incentivize them to leave. And then you have the AfD saying, no, we're going to force them to leave. Which option is more appealing to the German masses? It's the latter of the two. The latter of the two will be the most appealing. Well, the most appealing for a huge chunk of the German population, at least. And I think the AfD is already using this as a selling point. And I think the AfD is going to win big. That's my prediction. I think they're going to win big. and I think they're going to win big in the next election, to a great extent because of this current Syrian migrant crisis that's been exacerbated by the toppling of Assad. I think Peter Zion is correct, at least to some extent, because I think he's correct to some extent when he says, I'm not really worried about the far right for the next year or for the year after that, but I'm worried about the far right for the next 10 to 15 years. You know, what's the next 10 to 15 years going to look like in Germany? And I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be a big nationalist Frankenstein. I could be wrong, but, you know, we'll see. Or maybe Germany will let Syrians stay if they join the army. Oh, that's another option. Yeah, that's another possibility. If you join the army, you can stay. I personally think it should be a case-by-case basis. I'm not too crazy about this school of thought that just wants to do a whole black and white, wide brush sort of thing and deport everybody. I don't agree with that. I think that's unethical. Because some people indeed are law-abiding people who've never caused any problems. They've started businesses in Germany, and they're fine. They're not causing any problems. And I think that if you have started a business, or if you are employed and you have not broken any laws, I don't think you should be deported. Some conservatives or some righties may get mad at that opinion, but that's my opinion. I don't think that people should be deported if they're law-abiding and if they have started businesses or have employment. Now, if you have done crimes, then you should be deported. If you have a criminal record, you should be deported. If you are running around screaming Allahu Akbar, you should be deported. If you're screaming Allahu Akbar, you should be told, listen, you should be Allahu Akbarking back in Syria with your HTS friends. But I think if you're just a regular dude and you own like a shisha shop or something, or a kebab shop, and you're not bothering anybody, I don't see why you should be deported. The whole world went to shit since 2020. Yeah, it got worse in 2020, definitely. The problems were there before 2020, but 2020 really exacerbated a lot of the problems. You know, it got nationalism to be even more intense. It got mistrust for the government to be even stronger. And it really did help to amplify populism in the world. Now, the lack of trust in government institutions and establishments are 10 times higher. And a lot of that really began during the COVID crisis. Just hours after President Bashar al-Assad boarded a plane for Russia on Sunday, thousands of Syrians who had fled to escape his rule and the civil war to unseat him celebrated in the streets across Germany. Now, this is a big mistake. This is a big mistake. If you're part of an ethnic group that's already unpopular, don't go around flaunting your country of origins problems or your country of origins affairs on the streets, because then people really start to hate you, and they'll say, when these people are celebrating. You see, a lot of these people don't want to leave, but they don't mind celebrating the downfall of Assad. Why? You shouldn't be doing that. Don't do that. Because then what happens is that these nationalists say, well, you're so happy that he's gone, it's time to go back. Well, I don't want to go back. It's time to go back. That's the problem. And that's the problem. When you start flaunting the issues of your country of origin, then the people that hate you start saying things like, well, you should go back. And then you kind of give them this propaganda fodder that gets these people spurred to push for your deportation. The political reaction in Berlin came nearly as quickly. By Monday, far-right and even some mainstream politicians were calling for the return of some of the nearly 1 million Syrians who have made Germany home. Many refugees who have found protection in Germany are now finally hopeful of being able to return to their Syrian homeland and rebuild their country, said Nancy Faeser, the German Interior Minister, who is responsible for refugees. Several European countries, including Britain, Germany, Greece, Italy, and Sweden, swiftly announced that they would temporarily suspend legal proceedings considering asylum status for Syrians. Austria went a step further and announced that it would also prepare to deport Syrians whose claims for asylum fail. Now, to deport people whose asylum claims fail is one thing, but to deport people who have been living in your country for years, that's a different thing. That's a much more dramatic move. Do you want to go back to this? So you're going to leave nice Germany with all the buildings, for the gremlins. Which one are you going to choose? Really? You want to live with gremlins, or do you want to live with Hans? Now, Hans is a nice guy until his money starts to go down and he starts blaming you for his problems. Then Hans is no longer a nice guy. Hans becomes the devil. And before you know it, you're being deported, or you're even worse than that, you're in a camp. Or you're being forced into the army to fight Russia. Now, that's another possibility. The primary reason cited by the various authorities was that the Assad regime from which the asylum seekers had fled no longer exists. Now, is that the only reason why Syrians left their country? I think that was one of the reasons why. That may have been the main reason why, but listen, I'll tell you guys a story from my own personal work. I helped a Syrian dude get into Europe. I did, many years ago, back in 2013 or 14. So this was around a decade or so ago. I knew a Syrian dude who was living in Saudi Arabia. He did not want to go back to Syria. He was living in Saudi Arabia with a visa. And he told me, he said, I do not want to go back to Syria. He said, I'm a Christian. And he said, my father was murdered by the rebels. I do not want to go back. And so we tried to help him out. We did. We successfully helped him out. And we got him a ticket to the UK. We brought him to Glasgow. And then from Glasgow, when he arrived in Glasgow, he had to live in a refugee center. We didn't have to live there, but because he had no money for a hotel, he had to live in this refugee center. And he said the refugee center was awful because he had to share a room with like 5 or 6 Somalians. And he said it just absolutely sucked because they were doing their 5 prayers a day and in the room, and they had to share one room together. And he said it just absolutely sucked. So we paid money for a hotel. He stayed in a hotel, and he was very happy about that. And then we paid for his lawyer, his refugee lawyer, immigration lawyer, and he got vetted. He went through an interview, and the immigration center over there in Glasgow said, "Okay, you're definitely a refugee. You're escaping religious persecution. You can live here." And I think he's still over there. I haven't checked on him in a while, but he's probably still over there. He's somewhere in Europe, more than likely. I doubt he went back to Syria, but we helped him out. And he told me, he said, I have no issue with Bashar al-Assad. He said, I want Bashar al-Assad to stay in power. He was protecting all of us. He said, it's these damn rebels that are the problem. So are all the refugees in Europe because of Assad? I think that's a narrative that's sort of overused. Not sort of, it is. I think it's overused. I think a bunch of people left because of just war. They just wanted to escape war. It didn't matter who's doing the killing, Bashar or the rebels. They just wanted to escape bloodshed. That's it. And so they know that, yeah, okay, Bashar al-Assad is gone, but still a shithole. And it's being overran by gremlins. So why would you want to go back? But because the narrative for so long has been that these people left because of Assad, then now all the refugees are painted with this broad brush, and what is said about them is that they should all leave because they ran away because of Assad. Now Assad is gone. They should go back. And I think that is an inadequate observation. Assad even celebrated Christmas. He was great. Assad was not a bad leader. Did he kill people? Yes. If you're the leader of a Middle Eastern country, guess what? You're killing people. You can't survive if you don't kill people, because those people will kill you. The Middle East can be a very brutal place. You know, it can be almost a Darwinistic type of society where everything is seen through strength, and everything is determined by strength. And if you don't kill people, they're going to kill you. That's the problem with the Middle East. You know, that's the problem with the Middle East. It's like, if Assad didn't kill those rebels would have shoved a stick up his ass like they did to Gaddafi, and they would have sodomized his wife. And that's the problem. I don't think Assad went out of his way to kill people. I don't think he got up in the morning saying, I really want to kill people. I think it was just a situation where you have these rebels who are being backed by NATO, and those rebels want to kill you, and they want to kill all your people and kill Alawites and kill Christians and all that shit. It's like, well, man, if I was Bashar al-Assad, you best damn well believe I'd be bombing people. I'd be bombing those rebels. I'd be using the army to take those bastards out. I'd be inviting the Russians to come in and take those bastards out. Abso-freaking-lutely. You know, I think the biggest mistake Assad did was allowing the internet in his country. I think that was the biggest mistake he did. Bashar al-Assad was very westernized. He was very much influenced by the fact that he had lived in England. He was working as an eye doctor. And looking at the situation now, I think he would have been better off if he had just stayed as an eye doctor. I think he would have been better off if he had just stayed in England and worked as an eye doctor. Could you imagine going to an eye doctor and there's Bashar al-Assad and he's checking out your eyeballs and he's telling you about what kind of glasses you need, and he's trying to determine which prescription glasses you need? That would be so, it would be so awesome. Oh my god, I just thought of this. Bashar al-Assad is gone, right? He's living in Russia. It would be so cool if one day you're on YouTube at like 3 in the morning and then YouTube said, hey, check out this video. Some dude's playing Resident Evil. And you click on it and it's Bashar al-Assad live streaming. It's Bashar al-Assad live streaming himself and he's playing Resident Evil. And he's like, this is what I was doing to those rebels. Get him, Leon. And I got him! If you've ever played RE4, you know what I'm talking about. This is why boomers stopped watching me. This is why YouTube says, hey, most of your listeners are millennials. Thank God. I can talk to people who understand what I'm talking about. The problem with talking about video games and you got boomers listening to you is they don't know what the hell you're talking about. They're like, well, this guy is talking about Resident Evil, Resident, the residents of evil. So what the f is Resident Evil? Leon Kennedy. The only Kennedy I know is RFK or JFK. Those are the only Kennedys I know. This guy's talking about Leon Kennedy, T-Virus, Umbrella Corporation. What the dude? I intentionally spoke like a millennial to scare the boomers out, and I was so happy. I was so elated when I read on YouTube analytics the great majority of the people listening to you are millennials. I said, oh, thank God. And how many boomers are listening to me? According to YouTube analytics, it's like 3%. I'm like, oh, thank the Lord. I can talk and not have to worry about people not understanding me. That's why he had the freedom to become an eye doctor. I'd binge watch? Hell yes. Could you imagine Bashar al-Assad live streaming from Russia and he's playing Resident Evil? And he's playing Leon Kennedy and he's saying, this is what I was doing to those rebels. And Leon Kennedy has unlimited rocket launchers. He has an unlimited rocket launcher and he's just blasting away. And then the game tells you about how Umbrella Corporation infected all these people with a parasite to make them zombies. And then Bashar al-Assad said, Umbrella Corporation is NATO. NATO made all the zombies. I'm fighting NATO in this game. This is my fantasy. Oh, and then his wife comes in the room and she's like, stop playing that game, Bashar. You don't pay any attention to me. And he's got 12 people listening to him. Oh, that would be awesome. That's a dream. Bashar Assad might become an eye doctor in Russia. That would be awesome. That would be so cool if he just becomes a regular dude and just goes back to normal life and he's an eye doctor and most people don't even know who he is. They just think he's just a nice Middle Eastern dude. Jens Spahn, a German health minister under former Chancellor Angela Merkel, alluded to that possibility in a TV interview on Monday. Quote, what if the German government said, we will charter planes for anyone who wants to go back to Syria, and we will give them €1,000 to get them started, he said, referring to a sum worth about $1,000. The thing is that this is only going to work for people who want to leave. People who want to leave, yeah, they'll take the €1,000 easily and they'll go back. But for people who don't want to leave, €1,000 is not going to convince them to leave. To many Syrians who have successfully and painstakingly integrated in European society, such comments were troubling. It was shocking that on the same day that the Assad regime fell, we immediately heard politicians from Germany and all over Europe talk about when and how the Syrians should go back, said Anas Abura, 38 years old, a curator and artistic director in Hamburg, who arrived from Syria in 2015. See, this is what I'm talking about. You have people who've been living in Germany for almost a decade, and they have jobs. This guy's an art curator. He has integrated himself to some extent. I mean, this dude is just, he's got a job. He has established himself in the country. And I don't think this guy is a criminal. I mean, he's an art curator for crying out loud in Hamburg. I don't think this guy is a member of ISIS. That's what I'm saying. I think it should be a case-by-case basis. I think if you've done crimes, yes, you should be deported. And I think if you are screaming Allahu Akbar, or Allahu Akbar, or if you have associated yourself in any way with ISIS ideology, you should be deported. But, I mean, if you're just a regular dude who's got a job, I don't see what the issue is. And so Anas Abura is saying, listen, these people want to kick us out. And he says, no, I'm sorry. We are an established community, and we are established here as individuals. And it is up to us to decide when and how to go and help rebuild Syria. Ooh, damn. That type of language, that's strong language. That may be seen as a little bit defiant by the hard right guys, the hardliners. And they're going to say, who in the hell are you to decide whether or not you can or cannot live in our country, the nation of the Teutonic people, the nation of the Germanians, the ones who defeated the Roman Empire. Listen, buddy, we defeated the Romans who tried to invade us. You're not going to invade us. No. We're not going to allow that. How dare you come into our country, take jobs from us, take money from us, take Lebensraum, German space, and YouTube, I am simply being sarcastic here. This is a parody. I am not saying this with sincerity at all. But who are you to take the Lebensraum of the German people? We're gonna determine whether or not you can or cannot stay. While more than 100,000 are now German citizens, the influx is blamed for helping to fuel the rise of the xenophobic far-right Alternative for Germany, or Alternative for Deutschland party, which routinely denigrates single young men from Syria and Afghanistan. And let's not forget, there was a meeting that was supposed to be secret in Potsdam, Germany, in which you had all these AfD people getting together, and they also had some far-right activists there, and there was, I want to say, at least one really rich person who was there, and the whole meeting was about how they were going to deport non-Germans and how they were going to deport even citizens. They talked about deporting even citizens, naturalized German citizens, and this is what the AfD wants to do. They just don't want to deport Syrians who have been here for a few months or for a year. They want to deport even people who have become citizens. And that would include these 100,000 people. As Germany prepares for elections early next year, nearly all parties, including the left-leaning Greens, are in favor of curbs. See, the thing is that the Greens will talk about incentivizing Syrians to leave. They're not saying that they want to deport people. The AfD has said they want to deport people. That's the difference, you see. I understand incentivizing, but it's one thing to incentivize people to leave voluntarily. It's another thing to force people, right? And that goes without saying. Many diplomatic exchanges between these old kingdoms. It's very fascinating. Yeah, Hittites, Mitannians, Trojans. These were all Indo-European peoples that were related, and they were living in the Near East. I think the Christian Syrians should be allowed to stay. I agree, but the thing is would that be allowed by these far-right people if they take power? Are they going to tolerate Christians, or are they just going to generalize everybody who's Syrian and say they all deserve to be kicked out? Them going back to Syria would be like sending lambs to the slaughter. That's right. That's correct. Kind of like how the Germans deported people to death camps. So it says here, as Germany prepares for elections early next year, nearly all parties, including the left-leaning Greens, are in favor of curbs. Gerald Knaus, a migration expert who has advised the German government, said that any discussions about sending Syrians established in Europe back home was largely political posturing. In reality, courts would most likely prevent such deportations because many European countries prohibit sending asylum seekers back to dangerous situations. So that's a really good point here. So this article is saying that the far right wants to do deportations, but the court system will intervene. Again, this is why you need a court system to act as a balance against democracy, because democracy, many times, I think every single time, democracy will eventually democracy will turn to tyranny. And I think every single time, eventually people will vote for some kind of tyranny because the people feel threatened by some sort of a threat, some sort of an outside threat, or some sort of an internal threat, or some sort they will feel threatened by a perceived threat. There's that reality. And so they will vote for tyranny under the guise of protection, or in the name of protection. And so there's that reality. So democracies will always eventually vote for tyranny. I think it's inevitable, right? For the most part. I'm sure there are cases where that never happened, but I think eventually people vote for tyranny and despotism. And so what's going to happen? You're going to have these Syrians living in Germany, and then every time the government wants to do a mass deportation, let's say the government wants to do a mass deportation, the courts are always going to be there to intervene and say, nope, you can't do that. That's against these people's rights as refugees, etc. And so with that sort of system hindering mass deportation, I'm sure a lot of Germans are going to get even more angry. They're going to say, why are these Syrians still here? They should be deported. And then they're going to be told, well, because the court system protects them. And so fascist despotism will appear even more popular. And then that nationalist urge is going to get even more intense, and it's going to grow even further, because they're going to say, well, we should just diminish the power of the courts so that we can do mass deportations. And then you have a situation not too different from what happened with the Nazis when the Nazis took full power and basically neutralized the German constitution. So it says here, nobody falls for the idea that you could get someone to move back to Syria just for 1,000 euros. True, absolutely. Yet in much of Europe, countries have adopted or are considering harsher policies than before, and the decisions to suspend Syrian asylum applications are taking place in the context of heated debates over irregular immigration. So right now, there's a huge national debate in Germany about what to do with these refugees. That debate is going to translate over into the election. And the far right is going to have a big selling point by saying that they're going to do mass deportations. And they've already been using this selling point, and that's been very helpful for them because a lot of people find that appealing. A lot of people in Germany find it appealing. So it says here that the country's migration minister, this is the Greek, by the way, this is Greece's migration minister, Nikos Panagiotopoulos, said, quote, at the moment, one thing is certain, asylum can no longer be given to a Syrian citizen when they cite persecution by the Assad regime from the moment that the Assad regime no longer exists. And this is true. So what's going to happen? You're going to have Syrians saying, well, we're being persecuted. We're afraid of terrorists. We're afraid of ISIS. We're afraid of being persecuted because we're Christians. You have those types of cases. So it says here that you have 9,500 Syrians awaiting the decision regarding their migration status in Greece. In Austria, you have 7,300 Syrian migrants who are trying to gain asylum. And in Britain, you have 6,500, and in France, you have 700. The Germans have the biggest number, 42,270 people, Syrians, trying to get an asylum process. But that process has been frozen. All of the processes, how do you say it, of these Syrian asylum seekers have been frozen. And Austria has 6,500, Greece has 9,500, Austria has 7,300, Greece has 9,500, Britain has 6,500, and it just so happens that the country that has the most asylum seekers, Syrian asylum seekers, is the country that once exterminated millions of people. So, not a very good combination. Who knows what's going to happen? It could be that these people will be forced into the military. It could be that these people are all just going to be forced to be out, to be sent back. It's possible that all these people will be deported, and that's it. Or it's possible that these people, at least some of them, will end up in camps somewhere. Who knows? But with the rise of this far-right ideology, and with the rise of far-right politics, I don't think it's going to be nice. I think it's going to be very ugly. I think the future is going to be ugly.
In southern Berlin, Syrians have made a home from home. Streets filled with reminders of the lives many fled due to war. Germany's taken in the most Syrians in the EU. Yaman is one of around 1 million now living here, and he's not ready to go home yet.
You see, and the thing is that this guy has a business, right? He's got a bakery. He's not trying to suck the system of welfare money. He has a business. So if this guy hasn't committed any crimes, or if this guy hasn't done any sort of ISIS activity, I don't see the reason to deport him. That's my opinion. But it's difficult to tell this guy, well, it's not difficult depending on the person you are, but it would be difficult to tell this guy, hey, you got to leave, when he has a business and he has a established life already in the country.
It's not safe. There's no security right now. So it would be a bad...
And the thing is that he's right. There is no security. It's not a stable country. Germany is not stable. Oh, sorry, Syria is not stable at all. Germany being unstable, that actually might be a possibility in the future. But for now, Syria is not stable. It is a dangerous-ass country because the whole thing is overran by gremlins, because they overthrew the guy who was fighting the gremlins when they should have just kept him there. But the whole point of overthrowing Bashar al-Assad was not to defeat the gremlins. The point of overthrowing Bashar al-Assad was to enable the gremlins to overrun the country so that countries like Israel and Turkey can come out and say, well, there's a reason for us now to invade the land and to rape Syria. And you see that happening right before your eyes. Nice slip, yeah. Yeah, Germany is not unstable. Not yet, right? Dang it. My mouse just died. Oh my gosh. Note to self, recharge my mouse every single day. Now I gotta wait a few minutes. Not a few minutes. Well, maybe like a minute. I'll wait. Yeah, nice slip. But now I'm just staring at chat. I'm staring at chat right now. I gotta wait for the mouse to power back on. Maybe I can hold on a second. Okay, the mouse is working. Let's go back and play the video. I'm gonna charge the mouse as the video is playing.
Idea to send people back so early, he says. Yaman says
this is the problem right here. When ethnic groups do this kind of bullshit, just don't. Why are you flaunting your ethnic country of origin in a country that's already sick of you? Just don't do this. Because now you've just given the green light for everyone to say, oh, you're so happy that Assad is gone, go back. And who knows, maybe these people will go back happily. But I don't think a lot of them want to go back.
Celebrated the fall of Assad, but then Germany announced it was temporarily freezing asylum applications for Syrians. And excitement quickly turned to fears of being forced home too soon. I pay taxes and I do nothing illegal. Am I supposed...
If the guy has done nothing illegal, he's paying taxes, and he has a business, I don't see it as ethical to deport him. My opinion, I'm sure everybody would disagree with me, but that's my opinion.
...is to close everything and go home, or what? Why? He says. It was with applause and warmth Germans welcomed the Syrian refugees who flooded into the country under the 2015 open door policy. New arrival Anas took this selfie with the then Chancellor Angela Merkel at the time. Almost a decade on, he says the mood has hardened.
I
don't feel welcome anymore.
That's the reality, by the way. The Germans are letting these people know that they're not welcomed. And they're letting them know by voting for the AfD. And that is a reflection of the popularity of that far-right nationalist party. And it's only going to grow. The thing is this. Here's my theory, okay? remember some time ago, the Republicans and the Democrats were going to agree on an immigration policy. And what happened? Donald Trump stepped in and he told the Republicans, don't vote for this bill, because if you do, it might hurt my campaign. Because what is Trump's biggest selling point, or what's one of his biggest selling points? One of his biggest selling points is what? Fighting against lenient immigration policy. Deporting people, doing mass deportations of illegal immigrants, being very, very harsh when it comes to immigration in the United States. That is one of Trump's biggest selling points. And so the Republicans and the Democrats, they were about to agree on some sort of an immigration policy that would have curbed immigration to some extent. And Trump said, he told the Republicans, do not agree on that bill, because if that bill passes, it could hurt my election. Now, why could it have hurt his election, right? How could that be possible? Because if you fix the immigration problem, or if you curb the immigration situation in the United States, then there is a chance that people could say, well, what's the point of voting for Trump? The immigration problem has been tempered to some extent. And that's what Trump was afraid of. So the AFD, this is what I'm suspecting, and I can't prove this, but this is what I believe. The AFD in Germany the AFD in Germany has the same mentality, right? They know if they lose all the refugees, if all the refugees are deported overnight, then the German people could say, it's possible that the German people could say, what's the point of voting for the AFD? The refugees are no longer a problem. And the AFD would lose their number one selling point. Their number one selling point is what? We're going to deport the refugees. Vote for us. And that's how they're getting into power. So these refugees saying, I don't want to leave, helps the AFD. The AFD wants them to not want to leave. Because then the AFD, during the election, could say, these refugees don't want to leave. They're still here. We're going to make sure that they leave. We'll vote for the AFD because that's what we want, right? That's what we, the German voters, want. So the AFD wants these people to not want to leave. If all these people just left overnight, the AFD, I think, would lose a lot of popularity. But if these people are staying, and they're staying in very large numbers, and they are adamant about staying, and they're obstinate about staying, and they make it very clear that they want to stay, then the AFD has a very, very strong selling point and will advance very successfully in the next election. That's my opinion. Shia LaBeouf, yeah, they both share Semitic genes, so there's that overlap.
Get the feeling that Germany wants to throw us out as soon as possible. Even if we've worked hard and integrated ourselves, we're not welcome, he tells me. It took only a few days for several countries here in Europe to announce a freeze on asylum applications, which has left many here worried, what's next? Is there more drastic action to come? Particularly here in Germany, with a general election around the corner and migration a favourite weapon of the far right.
And this guy doesn't want the refugees to leave, at least not right now. He doesn't want them to leave right now. He wants those refugees to stay for a prolonged period of time. He wants them to stay until they can get ultimate power. Until they can get total power over the government, they don't want those refugees to stay because they know what's getting them into power is the presence of the refugees. That's it. But once they can get total power, then they can start working to change the face of the society. They can revive nationalism in the society. They can revive German militarism and embed German militarism back into the culture and make it an integral part of German society. They can make it a part of the cult of personality in the German government, or they can make a cult of personality that revolves around race and militarism, just like the Nazis back in the past. And I'm not just making this up. Bjorn Höcke himself has stated that he wants to revive nationalism in Germany and that he actually wants to enforce nationalism in the society. In other words, he wants to coerce the German society into conforming to his ideology. And the AfD is the most militarist party in Germany right now. There is no party more militaristic than them. Now you can say, well, they don't want war with Russia and they're the peaceniks. That's a bunch of bullshit. That's just all a ploy that they are using to make it seem like they're the sane, peace-loving party, blah, blah, blah. But if you look at their party, they have the highest number of military officials or former military officials than any other party in Germany currently. And they even have their own think tank that consists entirely of former German military officials, some of whom were pretty big in the German armed forces. One of them was a pretty big figurehead in NATO. So these people are hardcore militarist, and one of their goals is to make the German military very, very powerful. And Germany has the capacity to do that. They have the capabilities, they have the capacity to do that. So that's what these people are thinking. That's what's going on in their collective headspace. So their strategy is, and again, I don't have a white paper that says this is the strategy, but this is just me making an observation, and I think it's quite obvious. The fact that Donald Trump said, hey, don't agree with the Democrats on an immigration policy because it might hurt my election, that fact really confirms to me that these types of politicians who win because of nationalism or because of some sort of a nationalist selling point want the presence of refugees in their societies because that presence incentivizes people or encourages people to vote for them, to vote in favor of nationalist parties. Like how Netanyahu wants Hamas to stay. Excellent observation. I didn't think about that. But yes, that is very, very true. Why did Benjamin Netanyahu pour out billions of dollars to fund Hamas? Does he love terrorism? Well, he doesn't love terrorism itself. It's not like he's Allahu Akbarking in his bedroom or anything like that. But he loves the fact that Hamas is there, present, because as long as terrorists are there, Benjamin Netanyahu has that strong selling point to incentivize people to vote for him. And as long as that incentive is there, he stays in power. If Hamas disappeared, if Hezbollah disappeared, if all these terrorists disappeared, people wouldn't vote for the Likud. People would vote for some centrist party, for some center-left party. Same thing goes with Germany. If these refugees weren't there, then people would just vote for the Christian Democrats or the Social Democrats or the Greens, one of those old school, old guard established parties. They wouldn't be voting for a revived Nazi party. And this is the bottom line. Why are people voting for this party? It's because they are terrified of the idea of being overran by immigrants. And they're terrified of high crime rates, which is understandable. And they're voting for that. That's what they're voting for. And, when the Nazis were campaigning, people weren't voting for Auschwitz. People weren't voting for going to war with the Soviet Union. People were voting to empower Germany, to reinvigorate their country. They were voting for preventing Bolshevik influence in their society. So the same thing can be applied to now. People aren't voting for the AfD because maybe they do want to see a revived Hitler, but people are not voting for the AfD because, they want Germany to expand, to gain Lebensraum or something like that. At least I hope not. But people, if I had to guess, people for the most part are voting for the AfD because of the problems that have come with mass immigration. So as long as those refugees are there, people are going to vote for the AfD. So these people, believe me, they don't want the refugees to all leave. They want a ton of refugees to stay behind and to be adamant about staying in Germany so that the Germans can say, well, we're going to vote for the AfD and they're going to kick you out. And that's the plan. It's not always a conspiracy. Well, it doesn't have to be. It's just obvious. Just like it's obvious as to why Netanyahu gave billions of dollars to Hamas.
The anti-immigration far-right Alternative for Germany party is currently second in the polls. Syrians fear if that party gets in, they'll get kicked out. At the Christmas market, goodwill is on display, but it's nearing its limit.
And once that is guaranteed, people who have no job, no life, no family here, or no any other strong connections should leave. They should go back to their homeland.
So after all
this is what a lot of the German people are saying. And they did a poll recently that found that the second most popular party in Germany is the AfD. I wonder why.